to use any platform to authentically connect with other people, you basically had to be desperate. So I don't think networking is adding somebody and having them accept your request and then them being just like a connection. Like you have X number of followers, you have 5,000 connections. Those people don't know you. They're not people you can lean on. They're not people that are going to open doors for you. 80% of jobs are filled through people you know. Instead of it being like, here's who I am, here's what I want from you, like here's my sales pitch, that other person's really not likely to respond.
Because retention is 30 seconds nowadays on everything, so...
We crossed 350,000 downloads,
Nice.
hit 19 on the App Store, and we're about to hit 1 million ARR in 10 months of monetization. We were tracking 40 to 60% monthly retention, which is massive for like what is very much still a beta. And it's like I literally thought I would see 1% conversion, like full access, but it was like 30% conversion. Nice. Which is insane. If you're building in the dark and you're like, this product needs to be perfect before I ship it out, you're never going to ship it out.
What's the biggest lie founders tell themselves about product market fit? Hey guys, welcome back to Funds and Founders. We have Krishna on today. Before I start every episode, I ask everyone who comes on to plug themselves.
Okay.
Where should folks reach out? What are you building? Just tell them who you are before they drop off, because retention is 30 seconds nowadays on everything. So let's plug you now. We'll plug you at the end. We'll link everything, but just let folks know where to find you, what you're working on.
My name is Krishna. I'm the founder and CEO of Clockout. So we're the fastest growing networking platform for Gen Z. We focus on local, meaningful networking. So we released our full beta about a year ago. We're at we crossed 350,000 downloads, nice. Hit 19 on the App Store, and we're about to hit 1 million ARR in 10 months of monetization, which has been really exciting. Nice. So it's been amazing to see so much growth on the thesis of like, there needs to be a networking product that truly helps people build their network on like a human level. And then on the other side, there really needs to be a product that caters to younger professionals, because I think like Gen Z, younger professionals, they don't really resonate with LinkedIn, especially as a platform of like, how do I authentically meet people? How do I get a coffee chat when so much of LinkedIn feels like spam? And so that's kind of the market that we've been targeting, you know, filling the gaps that LinkedIn doesn't fill when it comes to meaningful and authentic networking.
Nice. Define networking for me.
That's a good question. So maybe a place to start is like what networking is not. So I don't think networking is adding somebody and having them accept your request and then them being just like a connection, you know, and like wherever it'll say like you have X number of followers, you have 5,000 connections. Those people don't know you. They're not people you can lean on. They're not people that are going to open doors for you. And there are studies that like 80% of jobs are filled through people you know. And so to me, networking is building an authentic relationship with another person. Maybe you have a conversation with them. Maybe you have a Zoom call. Better if it's a coffee chat. Maybe you went to an event and then you made friends with X, Y, and Z person. And then now they're your connection, but they're also your friend. So to me, networking is authentic and not transactional, because those are the people that are at the end of the day going to open doors for you in your career.
For someone listening who doesn't really go out and network and is trying to build their connections, build better relationships with people, what are 2 or 3 things you tell them to focus on instead of just a cold DM, mass email, like all the traditional advice you get for, you know, building a network? What are 1 or 2 things that you would say work better and are more underset in the market?
I think first of all, like try to network. And that's kind of the way Clockout is positioned. Like we're a local networking platform. That doesn't mean that every person you connect with, you end up meeting in person. But just the fact that there's like that ethos of, you know, the end intent of every conversation is to hopefully potentially meet that person in person or over a Zoom call. Like get it off of just a DM and have a real conversation with this person. Yeah. Also, I think it's really important to, when you send a message, to be authentic. And what I mean by that is like, instead of it being like, here's who I am, here's what I want from you, like, here's my sales pitch, that other person's really not likely to respond. Whereas like, for me as a founder, if I see a founder that's building something cool, I'm just like, hey, could you tell me more about what you're building? Like, it looks really interesting. And I think that is just such a better way to build your network. Obviously, the best way to build your network is in person.
100%.
So like on Clockout, like we describe ourselves as a cross between LinkedIn and Meetup. So you have the community piece. We power now 4,500 professional communities, tens of thousands of events, hundreds of thousands of attendees at this point over the last year. And so, you join these communities, you can go to these events, and those are where the strongest connections happen. But of course, like there's only so many events you can go to each month just because life is the way that it is. And it's unrealistic to think that you can go to an unlimited number of events. And so that's where we add gamified networking opportunities and AI-driven intros where like the AI kind of tells you like who this person is. You get in a chat with them and you're really incentivized to meet them in person or schedule a coffee chat. But the way that we do it is like the more intros you get and the more intros where you have a conversation, the more your streak grows. So we give somebody, some reward and there's gamification.
Nice.
Because we want people to start having these authentic conversations.
Nice. I was in Austin before I moved to Arkansas, and there was a period of 2 years where I went to a networking event almost every day.
Really?
Over 2 years, I probably went to a couple hundred events.
Wow.
I want to say I met a lot of people.
Yeah.
My one networking hack was I would get their number on LinkedIn and send a selfie right away so that whenever the follow-up does happen, you have some visual recognition because you meet so many people.
Yeah.
You're never going to know a name.
That's
if
a
I
really
say, hey,
good idea, actually.
And so if they give me their number or they're comfortable with that, I'll just take my phone out, take a quick selfie. If it's LinkedIn, I can't always get that message fired.
Yeah.
So that's a hit or miss. But the one thing that I feel like I haven't done well or I haven't found a good tool for is continuing to build that relationship, right? It's really easy to have that first coffee.
Yeah.
But how can you keep in touch and build that relationship that is not very transactional? Because I think when you need it to be transactional, you can't go and activate a relationship or a networking situation if you haven't talked to them in 8 months. I can't talk to you once, never talk to you and be like, hey, I'm raising a round. Do you want to invest? Right?
For sure.
It just doesn't work like that.
For sure.
So I feel like that's one thing that I haven't figured out how to do well. So wanted to understand, have you noticed something or do you have any insight around this of you can make the first intro or event or coffee happen. How do you make sure that relationship turns into something meaningful? Whether that's an investment, a founder, a hire, just a better friend, whatever that relationship turns into.
Yeah.
Have you noticed or seen some insight from seeing these communities and users grow on Clockout?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I don't think there's like a one size fits all answer of like that there's any one piece of advice that's 100% going to work. At the end of the day, like you're bound to meet some people and not stay in touch with them. Yeah. But I totally agree with you that one thing I've seen works really well is like if you meet somebody in person, if you get their phone number, that's really helpful. But of course, if you're connecting on Clockout, the people that we see, it's really interesting. Like the people who come onto the product, and I think this is probably why they see the most benefit from it. I wouldn't say the typical person is trying to actually like get anything specific out of the connection. And so I think the ethos behind so many of these connections like on Clockout are like, for example, like our users in Tampa look so different than our users in New York. And like, as an example, in Tampa, there's a lot of real estate agents for whatever reason. And so these real estate agents, they really want to connect with other real estate agents because they're like, maybe we could swap deals, maybe we could learn from each other. And so the people that are the most consistent, whether it's like joining these communities and repeatedly going out and having those repeated interactions with other people, or, forming these relationships, I guess, without necessarily like if you go into it authentically without an actual transaction, you probably get the most out of it. That doesn't mean that people don't have specific goals in mind, and that has to be everybody. But that's kind of been what we've seen on Clockout, that a lot of people are not looking for anything transactional. A lot of people are coming to it because they're like, I want to connect with other ambitious people in my space. And this seems like the best place to go for that.
Makes sense. Shifting gears a little bit to talk about your journey. If I had to ask you, where does your entrepreneurial journey start? How would you respond?
That's a good question. It's funny because I never wanted to be a founder. If you actually asked me, like in undergrad, you know, the kids who are like, I'm going to do entrepreneurship, I was like, that's too risky because I'm a really risk averse person. And so for me, this absolutely happened by accident. So it started as a passion project in the sense that I graduated from undergrad in 2016. I always give people some context. Like I grew up in New Jersey. Went to Stern. So I know a lot of people in New York, but all my friends were working in finance and I was working in marketing. I didn't like where I was and I didn't know where I wanted to go. And I felt like my network was getting smaller and smaller in the sense that like people would leave, people move to new cities, you grow apart after college, you know, people just part ways. And then it's like, how do I continue, like that desire that you have in college of like, wanting to continue to authentically connect with other people is very much still there once you graduate. But then there aren't really opportunities to do that. And so I was on meetup.com at one point and I was like, I'm not using this. Like, I don't know who these people are. I don't know where they went to school. This is a terrible product for networking. And then on LinkedIn, I'm like, I'm not going to cold message spam people. Like, I'm not
like,
desperate, right?
Yeah.
Like it felt like to use any platform to authentically connect with other people, you basically had to be desperate because that's how difficult it was to use these platforms. So there was kind of this just like innate frustration of like, there really needs to be something better for networking that doesn't exist. And this was pre-COVID. And then post-COVID, and after, not even just during COVID, obviously post-COVID, when it became increasingly clear that we're moving to a world that's innately more digital, people's networks are getting smaller and smaller. Loneliness is a very real thing.
100%.
So, if I felt this as a millennial in 2016, how is Gen Z going to react when they enter the professional world? And future generations, it's not specific to Gen Z. So it's just like I just felt this desire to somehow solve this problem. Not that I necessarily really went into it being like, I'm going to be the one to solve this problem. It was just like, let me take a stab. So while I was in Columbia for grad school, I was in like this entrepreneurship program, like prototyping with a fellow student. And it just started as something that was fun to talk about and to explore. And it went from a passion project that was released in the market as an MVP/alpha, very basic product, but it got enough traction that we were able to raise about...
When was this, timeline-wise? Can you walk me through?
Yeah.
Started building it to, hey, let's go live.
Yeah, really good question. Started building 2021, but not seriously. Like...
At this time, you're
still
in the
in
full-time
grad
job.
school.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
in grad school. Okay.
I'm in grad school. This is fun to talk about, right? Then 2022 release, like a product that was built mostly with my own capital and a little bit of friends and family funding. I have a job at the Fed lined up. So I'm like, I don't even know if I'm seriously doing this. And let's see how the market reacts to this product. And we got quite a bit of traction and tens of thousands of downloads, close to 50,000 downloads.
To break that down,
2022.
How long did it take to build the MVP?
I think it took about probably about like 5 months.
Okay.
Maybe 4 months to build and then like 2 months of like getting it really ready to ship.
And are you working with a contractor or are you working with a team?
Contractor. So I was working with a team called Uptech, which is based out of Ukraine. They had a really great track record. They worked with like Unilever, Dollar Shave Club.
Nice.
I do not have a technical background. And so that was definitely like, I did a lot of diligence of like,
who should I go with?
Who should I go with? Who should I not go with? I don't want to pick the cheapest contractor and then the code has to be thrown out. And so the dev team was quite strong. They did a great job. It was a very simple product. So got quite a lot of, not a lot of traction, but enough to prove that there's market validation for this product. And it was essentially a party round. So what that means is there wasn't necessarily like one specific lead. There were notable investors. It was like family offices, micro VCs. We got corporate backing by Evite. And then there were a lot of angel checks as well. And I think that was like pretty standard at a pre-seed stage in like 2022, 2023. And then that capital was used to build the beta version of the real product. So after that went dark, because obviously the product was very simple and it wasn't enough to achieve product market fit. So it's like, with the capital that's been raised, how do we find and achieve product market fit? And I think something that was hard and something I learned the hard way was like trying not to chase perfection. So this space, like for example, like we released Clockout as a professional communities platform. It has evolved since, but of course the community piece is a big part of it. But nobody's ever cracked community correctly. Like if you look at the number of community platforms that exist and why all of them have failed or like they don't really succeed, there are many, many reasons behind that. So, you know, I knew what didn't work, but it was a really long process to figure out what does work and how do you build that from a UX standpoint. And I think I was very nervous of like shipping something out that wouldn't perform at the level at which I thought it would. So there was this constant, you know, product iteration that was occurring and trying to achieve perfection, you know, for this product. But the anxiety of not knowing if it's going to work or not, obviously, because there's not enough people who validated it. So we would do these like micro releases, maybe like 1,000 users, 500 users. That's not enough people for you to understand if your product
100%.
works or not, because there's no critical mass. So it really just got to a point where I was like, you know, our retention is pretty strong. Let's just release this thing. Like I don't look at it and think it's perfect, but let's release it and see how the market reacts. And the market was so pleasantly, it was performing so well. We were tracking 40 to 60% monthly retention, which is massive for like what is very much still a beta. And then there was so much like product iteration after building in public became so much easier because you're making data-driven decisions.
100%.
Even though the market reacted to it at a much greater scale, you know, and it performed much better than I thought, there were so many things that, you know, I didn't know or I didn't think about. So like, for example, we released it as a professional communities platform, but then people started connecting individually, right? Outside of these communities, because they're like, for example, if I'm a founder, I'd rather talk to this founder on Clockout because it's so much more chill. Like the interface feels like, you know, any sort of chatting platform with obviously the professional lens, but it doesn't feel transactional like LinkedIn. I can be myself. So then there was clearly a need and desire to connect individually on the platform. And that's when, and at this point, I hadn't even figured out how to monetize the platform yet. And obviously that is such a big question mark of like, even if your retention is high, can this product ever make money? Like you need to make money. So where we actually saw so much buying potential was people wanted to see who wanted to connect with them. So not only were they saying that this is what they wanted and in the data connecting with people individually, but they were willing to pay for it. So that's really when we innovated a lot on the intro side of like, you know, people come onto the platform for the communities and they stay involved in these communities, but on a day-to-day basis, they use it to connect individually. And that entire process of the user flow, because in my mind, I was like, are communities enough to maintain retention? And I think the combination of communities plus gamified individual interactions have worked so well. And that's not something I would have ever known if I chased perfection before releasing it. Because you never know how the market's going to react.
Makes sense.
So
you mentioned that you went live, you had users, and you were raising a party round. What did that process look like? Why did you go raise? Where did that initial ask come from? Because if you're funding it yourself, why not keep funding it and try to monetize versus why go raise? How did that shift or decision happen?
That's a really good question. And honestly, if I went back in time, like maybe I would have seen things differently. Our product was built with like $50,000 maximum, maybe like $100,000 once you use the friends and family funding. And then the rest was used on like the growth side. That's just not enough. Like the product itself was not at a stage where like, you know, we could have added some paywalls. Like we could have done all of these different things, but it was very clear that from a retention standpoint, that this product is heavily lacking. And I do see founders going like different ways in this day and age. Like there are some people that just bootstrap it and they're like, even though my product isn't perfect, I'd rather go the route of like monetization and dealing with being okay with the fact that like users don't love my product right now, but being able to generate revenue from them so that I can sustain myself. And I think that works for some founders, but I think the scale at which I wanted Clockout to be achieved, I at that point didn't believe that that was possible through revenue alone. And I think that's still the case. Like, even though we're about to hit $1 million in ARR, this is still very much a beta product. And if you want to attract top talent, like, I want an incredible CTO or head of product. I want an incredible growth person. Right now, I'm a solo founder. That's CMO, CPO, CTO, CFO, like raising capital, designing every marketing campaign. That's not scalable. So right now, we're actually profitable. But if you want to achieve scale, you do need a certain amount of capital. But now that I'm going in and I'm going out to raise a seed fundraise early next year, I have a lot of data that it isn't just about. I feel like in the beginning, fundraising just feels like you need to, like, your goal is to be perfect for the investor. Now the goal is not that at all. The goal is like, do I really need this capital? Like, what is my data? It's not about like hitting those perfect metrics to achieve somebody. It's about hitting those metrics because that's where I want the product to go, because it's actually what's best for the company. And so, you know,
my question is then, you raised the initial pre-seed. I think based on what I read online, it was like $1 million,
1.3 million.
1.3, yeah. Right? So if you're profitable and you have revenue, are you raising to then build out a team, or what are you raising for?
That's a good question. For one part of it is growth, and one part of it is a better team. Better team, not even necessarily that I need more developers or I need more engineers, but like, if you want to hire top talent, you need to be able to incentivize them and retain them. And at this stage, it's really, I would say like probably 20% of the raise would go to hiring those key hires. And then the rest, and then like maybe 25 to 30% would go towards like improving the product. And then the rest would be on like scalability on the growth channels that we have. So it's something that I've thought a lot about, of like, I could probably go and raise a pretty big round, but I only want to raise as much as I need, because then I'm guaranteed to get my investors a major return, and I'm guaranteed to get myself a major return without diluting myself preemptively.
Makes sense. One question I had is, you said you're a solo founder. Are you still working with the contracting team, or how is your team structured so that you can still build, deploy, push out new features, but you're also working on all these other things?
Oh, yeah. So in terms of my team structure, so I have one in-house employee. His name's Dylan. He's our director of marketing and ops, and he's really great with marketing and sourcing and just being a secondhand person for me when I can't handle everything, obviously. So like some of the more medial tasks, he's able to manage all of those things, and I'm very grateful to have him. I have a contracting team of 6 engineers, nice. 4 that are full-time, 1 that's an AI developer who's under contract, and 1 that's like, we're only iOS, so we're migrating to Android. So he's an Android developer. And then I have a PM and a QA. So like, I have a strong technical team, but that's the reason that, and so now it's like, we're profitable, but we're not profitable enough that I can funnel a ton more into marketing, Makes sense. I can funnel more into hiring these key hires. I think these key hires, like, if you have the right talent, you can guide your engineers in the correct direction, right? So like right now, it's like, I design every push, every logic behind every push notification is written by me. So like, to be that involved on a granular level to designing every single marketing campaign or sourcing every single marketing campaign, to the networking, to the fundraising, like, you can't scale as fast if you're one person doing all those things. So even though I have a team that I'm very grateful for that works very hard, I'm the only person who manages it, and that's not scalable.
Makes sense. What's been a challenge in this first part of the process, right? So you go MVP, family round, you raise some capital, and you're building outside of that, right? So what's been a challenge in this process that was difficult for you to sort of figure out and get over?
So many challenges, but do you mean specifically to friends and like specifically to the
so
fundraise?
like just in general of like being someone who's non-technical, you're not building an app, your main product is a technical product, right?
Yeah.
So there are parts of it that maybe you don't understand, or like there's parts of it that you're trying to build better, build faster, but there's with tech and deployments, there's always some issue, right?
Yeah.
You're going to raise money. You haven't raised money before. So how do you go about how to structure the round, how to pick investors, how big checks to take, how small checks to take, what do you want your safe to be structured at? So how did you go about handling and tackling all of these while still trying to grow the app and make sure that you had growth on the app side as well?
Absolutely. I mean, it was definitely really hard because like 2022. So I think what was really tough, and I'm sure every entrepreneur goes through this when they like, you underestimate how difficult things are. So like you go into it and you're like, if X, Y, and Z could raise at this valuation, I can definitely raise, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, going out into the fundraise or like for our team, like we were comparing with like 2020. And in 2020, like you could have like 5,000 people on your wait list and somebody was throwing you like a $2 million check, right? So if we're like, okay, we have tens of thousands of downloads, obviously we're going to be able to, you know, raise a round really fast. But that was not the case anymore. The market changed. And so it was a lot of, there was so much time being spent that was wasted on like pitching and being told like, your thesis isn't awesome. Like there's clearly a need for the space, but like we're not even investing at this time, or you're too early for us at this stage. So that was definitely really difficult. It was really interesting because we got and I was very lucky for this. The former CEO of Meetup, I happened to meet him and he was so interested in what we were building. And he joined our advisory board. And then through him, he introduced me to the former CEO of Evite. And he also joined our advisory board. And both of them are just such like incredible people and leaders that, you know, they really want to support young founders that are like building in the space of like social, authentic connection. And so the former CEO of Evite loved the product so much, and he introduced me to the current CEO of Evite.
Nice.
And he was like, I needed a product like this when I was young. I can't even imagine how much this generation needs a product like this. And so Evite Corporate backed us. And so once Evite backed us, it became very, very easy to fill up the round. So I actually raised like, I want to say like $600,000 in like 3 weeks.
Nice.
So once you like get that notable investor, raising the rest of the round is so easy when you have a lot of people on the sidelines. So learning even how to raise, how to pitch, that was a journey in and of itself. And also just being like realistic with yourself, like when you're going to VC. Like I actually spoke to a founder about this yesterday and he was like, I have 400 users and like 10 of them are paying and like I'm pitching to VCs and it's not going anywhere. And I was like I really think there are VCs that call themselves pre-seed, but when you're truly they're not really pre-seed. They may be pre-seed for like if you're AI B2B SaaS. Like if you're in any other vertical, pre-seed doesn't really exist anymore. So you have to be okay with like syndicating angel checks and getting some, you know, a notable investor. It could be like, for him, he was building a wellness product. I was like, try to get the former CEO of Calm to write you a check. Like, you know, get people who are thought leaders in this space to believe in your product. And after that, a lot of other people will invest. It may not be what you wanted it to be, but right now what I see founders who are raising a pre-seed, they're either going through an accelerator, like an A16Z speedrun, an Antler, a YC, or they're like syndicating like larger like angel checks into an SPV or something like that with some notable investors. And I think what's more important than like who, like it is important who you raise from, but your traction is a lot more important.
100%. So
it's like, you know, get those checks in the door from people who believe in you and use that capital to figure out what it is that you're building. And to your earlier question of like, what was the hardest part of this? I wouldn't even say like fundraising was actually truly the hardest part of this. Obviously it wasn't. That doesn't mean that it was easy. But I would say the hardest part of it is once you even have, obviously getting the capital is one part, but at least you have a goal, right? You have a goal of like, all my goal is I need to raise $1 million. Then you raise it and now you're like, now what? Like, how
do you effectively deploy it and not waste it?
Not even like, how do you, it's like, what am I building? It's like, there is market validation. That's why people believed in this. But this product is not enough to scale. Like, how do you achieve product market fit is by far, I think, the hardest problem to solve. Once you've achieved product market fit, it's a question about like scalability, refinement, UX, or like, but it's like the original question of what am I even building is very, very difficult. So that's what took really, really long. And like one big learning that I have for folks is like, don't be scared of like shipping things out early. And don't be scared of getting criticism from your users. Like people are going to see it and they're going to criticize it, but that's what's going to make your product stronger. If you're building in the dark and you're like, this product needs to be perfect before I ship it out, you're just like, you're never going to ship it out. So.
And you're never going to see the feedback that would help you refine. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that was the hardest and most anxiety-inducing part of this entire process was like, I don't know what I'm building and I want conviction over what I'm building. And is any of this going to work?
Can you define product market fit for me?
That's a good question. I mean, you can define product market fit on like an array of different metrics, right? Like it could be retention, it could be like virality, it could be monetization. And I think product market fit is like a very loose term where like your product is never perfect. Like would I say Clockout has achieved product market fit? I'm a very product oriented person. One thing I can say is like there's a lot of market validation in the sense that like the metrics are really strong, but I still know that this product has a long way to go. Maybe product market fit could be defined as like explosive virality or like a certain retention metric. But for me, fundamentally, maybe it's like not the best answer, but for me, it's almost like it's like a looser feeling of like, does this product solve the problem that I want it to solve? And for me, it's like, it's doing the best out there compared to other products because there isn't really anything in the community space or the networking space that works. But is it working to the level at which like I would be satisfied? And for me, that answer is it's getting there, but it's not there yet. But the fact that people are paying and there's so much retention and we're mostly growing via referrals shows me that there is potential for product market fit.
It's funny you say referrals. I think we maybe first connected sometime last year when we were talking about getting you on the podcast. And then I signed up for Clockout and had you approve me.
Uh-huh.
And then let me just pull up the message. I had a friend ping me a couple of weeks ago with invite link to Clockout. And I'm just trying to...
That's crazy. No, it's crazy. Like so many people have heard about us that I'm like, this is insane. Like I did not know so many people would hear about us through
he said something like, hey, you should sign up. They have like a small window or something for new people. And it was just funny because I'm already on the app, and then he said it in a way like, oh, you should do it fast before it like times out or whatever. I can't find the message, but I'll look for it after.
I mean, I do think like growth hacks are very real, right? So it's like not only you want to have a referral mechanic that also works really well. And I think creating FOMO around. So what's really interesting from like a release perspective and really helped us with virality was the fact that like I think a big issue with because we released as a community platform, you could say networking platform. A big issue is like products that like attract anyone and everyone then actually create value for no one. So I wanted it to be released as a product that was approval only, but then there's obvious downsides to it being approval only, which is like you lose out on a lot of potential users. So the growth mechanic that works the best for us is like the first person, like somebody who just comes on without a referral link has to get approved. But if you get an invite from somebody who was approved, then you skip the wait list. And not only does that create FOMO, but it also works for our thesis because let's say you're a software engineer, you're probably friends with other software engineers. Yeah. Not that we're only niche to like, you have to be super like tech finance consulting. We now have like small business owners, real estate agents, like every market, like Dallas and Tampa and Phoenix looks so different than Boston and New York and DC. It's just about like, are you a working, ambitious professional that other people on this platform would want to network with? Especially at a time where like, for example, on LinkedIn, there's definitely people on LinkedIn that you would never want to see content from, but the algorithms are so advanced that it's fine. Yeah. And for us, it's like, we're not there yet. This is a beta. So, you know, being able to turn something that could have hampered growth into something that actually creates virality was all about positioning.
Why did you decide to start with iOS only?
Simply because like we had an Android app out at one point on like the alpha and like I think we saw like 90% of our users were iOS, and like maintaining iOS and Android, we are built in React Native, so like it is cross-platform. But there are like, even if you're cross-platform, maintaining
it takes work deploying both.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time and effort to deploy both. But right now we are finally going to release an Android build. And it's funny because we have like almost 70,000 followers on Instagram. And I swear we get DMs multiple times a week, if not every day, of like, why are you guys not on Android? Why are you like, do you think Android users are not good enough for your product?
It's the green bubble.
Like,
it's always the green bubble.
And we're like, no, not at all. It's just a resource constraint thing. Like, we would love to have you on our product. And it's so funny when we get those DMs. But we are finally releasing on Android, which is exciting.
You mentioned that the app is approval only, sort of to cater to who's on the app and sort of make sure they're on the app for the right reasons, right? So how do you think about the approval process? What are you looking at? Do you actually reject folks, or is this more just a mechanism to create that sense of scarcity and
FOMO?
Sort of?
No, we do actually review folks. So in the beginning, it was like we had like a team of interns like manually reviewing every single application, and it would be like through the application process, we get somebody's where you have to input like where you work, your title, like you know, where you went to school, when you graduated. So we collect all this information about you to understand, like, are you an ambitious professional? Now we're able to collect people's LinkedIn data, which has been really, really helpful. So in the beginning, it was manual approvals, and that was insane. At one point, we had like 10,000 people to approve in one day, which was unsustainable for obvious reasons. And then we built an AI model. So what the AI model does is like it parses through all of the data, and it decides who we should approve, who we shouldn't. We actually did build like this fallback system of like, if people are rejected, you know, like a human sees them. And then we have like a team of interns doing that. But eventually, like, we need to refine these AI models. I don't know if we'll always be approval only. I think every product is like, typically when you release it to like a specific niche. Like Facebook was only
college students.
Even LinkedIn in its very early days, I think you had to get an invite to get on, or it was like very selective with who it let on. Instagram was only photographers. So by no means is Clockout always going to be this like approval only product. But in the beginning, as we set the stage in the market, and we don't have these hyper advanced algorithms where like you're only guaranteed to see people who are of a certain caliber. Well, not even caliber, just like people who would add value to your network, honestly. It made sense for us to be approval only.
Makes sense. So. The reason I ask is from a product sense, right? So when you think about new users, activation, account creation, those first initial moments of the journey are super important.
Absolutely.
So now when you add an approval, you've added a friction point.
Yeah.
And then even if your approval is within 5 minutes, you've probably already lost some percentage of customers
Yeah.
Because it's just like sort of that sense of like,
The onboarding.
oh yeah, I'll get back
drop-off.
to it later,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
if you approve it, and they just never get back to it, right?
So the way that we actually like the drop off for approvals, like once you get it's really low. So like 95% of people who get approved like come onto the app. I think the reason being like we make you like onboarding is really important. So you want people to be really excited during the onboarding process. You want them to feel really excited when they get accepted, and you want everything to be time sensitive. So like we send a really hype like push notification, a text message that not only tells you that you've been accepted to the network, but like all the stuff you get to unlock, and we're like, you have 24 hours to like accept this.
Nice.
And that like having those time constraints at like really specific points in the flow, along with like making somebody feel really excited during onboarding is so important, because onboarding is there are products that I'm sure like through the onboarding, like they probably lose like 80% of people. I wouldn't even be like some of these dating apps where it's like pages and pages and pages. I'm like, how would anybody go through this without you not seeing an immense amount of drop off?
Makes sense. I'd be really curious to see if you have the code or the data of just folks who are approved or come through referral, what their engagement and activation on the app is versus folks who go through approval and then have to wait and then be approved and then they come on. Just like from a curiosity perspective, I'm curious if there's a difference in engagement on the app in these two groups, because
that's a good question.
But just curious if
honestly we haven't done frankly we haven't done enough data segmentation, because there's just there's too much where I'm like, I see the data and then I'm like, all right, we need to ship this out, but there's so much that I want to get into that's much more granular to your point of like, is there a like I know the overall drop off is about 5% for somebody who's approved as to like if they open the app or not, but
it'd be curious. I mean, I'd be interested to look at.
I'm sure that there is a difference, because those who got referred, they only have to wait 15 minutes, and like the AI like basically takes their application first and immediately gets them an answer, and they most likely get approved. So I'm sure that like those who don't have to wait, you know, there's like a better conversion.
So not even just conversion, I'm talking about more down funnel. So if you think about, okay, open the app, created the account, completed onboarding,
what's
and then
their retention or what's their
and then
usage,
did some sort of engagement, however you define engagement on the app.
For sure.
So it'd just be an interesting stat to look at, because I feel like there's probably a lot of campaigns you can run accordingly to try to act. Again, it depends on like, are you trying to optimize for engagement, conversion, quality people? Like there's probably a lot of like nuances there, but as you were talking, I was just thinking that that'd be an interesting graph or data point to look at.
And it's like something that we're actually trying to build something around, like this concept called the inner circle. And so, for example, like what we saw a lot on the product was like, people were more, especially like on the community side, like if you join like a tech brunch club, theoretically you're like, this sounds so cool and there's all these incredible people coming out, but there's that nervousness of like going to some event alone and like not, and because this right now the product is private, it's like, I do want to join this with my friends. So like if you could create a mechanic where, you know, I can bring my friends on, this would be really great for me. And that's kind of, you know, how this referral system was created. And so right now we have something that's like build your inner circle and like you can invite your friends onto the product, but there hasn't been enough on the actual UX side of like, for example, being able to from the beginning join I don't know if you've ever like seen, this is so different, but I don't know if you've ever like applied for Zog Sports or like Volo.
No.
But for like Zog Sports, it's like young professional like sports leagues, right? And you can literally either join a league solo or like with your friends. And when you see those two options, you're like, oh my God, I'd rather do this with my friends. So then you like ask all your friends, right? So we want to make the inner circle like more integrated into the UX of like allowing people to join communities and networks with friends. And we think that is going to massively increase not only growth and virality, if you make that feel native to the product, but also retention. If you have your friends on, you're much more likely to participate in things.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So, yeah.
One thing I wanted to get your take on is, how do you think about pricing and monthly pricing, right? So my understanding is this is a good to have subscription for folks. It's not going to be I need this subscription every month. So in this world where everything's now becoming a subscription, sometimes folks are always looking at, do I really need this? Do I not need this? Am I not using it? Let me churn. How do you think about structuring that and pricing it so that it's still value intensive for the customer, but it also is like the optimal balance of, it's not going to hurt me, so maybe I don't churn if there's a month where I don't use it. But have you thought about that? How do you think about that pricing? How do you choose that price point accordingly to both work from your financial modeling perspective, but then also still be beneficial for the customer or the user on the app?
That's a really good question. I don't know if we necessarily thought about it from like the lens that you're talking about, in the sense that like we saw where people were willing to pay. And that was really like, to just, in the beginning, we say like, do you want full access or limited access? And we give people a free trial so that they can assess the value for themselves. And so that subscription is $99 a year. And the way that we, priced that is we were looking at similar products. So if you look at products like Opal, it's a totally different product. It's like a screen time blocker app. I don't know if you've ever used it before. But it was like, what are products pricing themselves, after that 1 week free trial, if they really are satisfying a specific need. And so honestly, like that was pure luck. Like I went out with like, let's just price it at this price point and have this, trial and see how it performs. And it performed so well. It was beyond my wildest dreams. Like I literally thought I would see 1% conversion for like full access, but it was like 30% conversion. Nice. Which is insane. And then in terms of, that's 30% conversion on the free trial. And then within that, it's about a 30%. So it's about like 10% of people are paying for full access from the get-go. And then for users that are on it, where they want to pay, and of course, there's so many areas where we can add like monetization, but the area where they're willing to pay is like, they want to see, so the way that our product works on like the intro side, it doesn't look like a dating app. And that was very important to us. But the mechanism is like, for you to know, like, you don't know who wants to connect with you unless like you also connect with them. And then you see, if somebody wants to connect with you, you see like a certain number of those people for free. Or like you see honestly like half of them for free. But if you want to see the other half, you have to pay.
Got it.
And then it was like, what are people willing to pay for that? So like that specific paywall, or like theoretically, is very similar to a dating app, even though people are not using Clockout for dating. So in terms of how we priced ourselves, we looked at like what other products, have their pricing models at. And then you can ship out like with multiple different pricing models. So we had like 7 different pricing models, and some were like, like focused more on weekly, some focused more on like, creating real value at like the 3-month subscription or like the monthly subscription. And then we landed on like, the price point that led to the most revenue from like a retention standpoint. Because it's not about just getting the revenue from them at that point in time, but it's like, you want that subscription, you want them to keep, like subscription retention is like a huge thing, right? Like if people don't see value at that price point, they're going to cancel their subscriptions. But then at the same time, you don't want to underprice yourself because then you're not generating enough revenue. So it was really very data driven of like, let's just ship super high, like not crazy expensive, but like more on the expensive side, one that's like really affordable. And then I think we landed somewhere in the middle of like, nice. I think it was like $30 a month was like the sweet spot. On
where folks were converting and staying.
And staying, yeah.
Nice, pretty cool. Are you ever worried about some of the other networking incumbents to build something similar and just take away a lot of your usage, or is that not a concern for you?
I mean, at the end of the day, you can't ever say that, like, anybody smart is going to say that, like, you never know what could happen in the market. But to date, like, we're the biggest player in this market of, like, new age networking. Like, am I scared of LinkedIn, for example, shipping out a networking product? No, because, like, the LinkedIn brand has, like, such a strong association with it that you're never gonna use any LinkedIn branded product to like authentically be yourself. Like that's just never gonna happen.
Got it.
So am I scared of like, and then it's like Bumble, right? Like Bumble Biz. Like it's associated with dating. So it's like, and also I think that this problem,
the spin-offs would always have some carryover sentiment from whatever the
parent company is, and none of the parent companies have a really strong negative association for the problem that we're trying to solve.
Makes
so sense. I'm not necessarily scared of that. I honestly haven't been really that scared about competition or competitors, because I think this space, there's a reason so many people have tried to enter this space and have failed. And there's so much reason that for me, there was so much anxiety of achieving product market fit, because it's really hard to solve this problem. So I think the unique take that we have has been our positioning in the market, our functionality, everything would be pretty hard to replicate. So we have not yet seen, at least to date, any competitors gaining any meaningful traction that would take away our user base.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Last question before we go into the rapid fire is, what's top of mind for the next 6 months for you? What's the biggest problem you're trying to solve right now?
There's so many things I'm trying to do right now. The biggest problem, I don't know if it's problem, but like my biggest goal from like the product side is like, you have so many people that are retained but don't necessarily use the product every single day. So like getting those MAUs to be like like a much higher proportion of them, getting them to be DAUs. So that's like one thing that I've been focusing on. So that's kind of where we've been innovating around like these intros. So like we had a very simple version of these intros that had a terrible algorithm behind it. And so gamification and the AI-driven intro matching and like the better data collection, like all of these product features are like going to be released now. So we're really hoping to double or maybe even triple engagement across the platform. So that's definitely something that I've been focusing on. On the other side of things, definitely preparing for fundraising. Yeah. So because I'm at a place where like I thought about it for a long time of like, you know, when do I want to fundraise? And hitting a place where like I know that the money would go a really long way from like a growth perspective and a product perspective. Now positioning myself up for a fundraise. Something that's like so funny is like Clockout doesn't have a website. And it's hilarious because as I've been talking to investors, they're like, you have a lot of traction for your stage, but like, why do you not have a website? And it's because I was so focused on like product and growth that I wasn't focused on like certain things like a website.
Yeah.
Like, so having to manage all of the things that go into fundraising, that's like relationship building, like optics, people being able to understand what your product is just by looking you up, alongside all of these product releases, alongside hiring new talent. There's so many things that I'm trying to do at the same time. But I'd say like the two biggest things that I'm focusing on are like gearing up for fundraising and finding the right investor, you know, lead the round on one side and having tons of conversations with people. And on the other side, like doubling engagement from like on a DAU basis.
Pretty cool. Yeah. But no, I think that was a great summary. We touched a lot of parts of the journey. I'll just quick to a bunch of rapid fire stuff. We'll try to cut these up into clips and stuff, but quick answers however you feel like giving them. Just a quick question. When you do reject someone on Clockout, do you send a rejection message as well? Or is it just you've been rejected?
We just send them like, we tell them like, we're so sorry, like we couldn't accept you at this time.
Okay. When you hit number 19 on the App Store, what was your holy shit moment? What happened when that happened and you got that traction?
I don't know I think we had just released in Dallas and like Dallas just loved this product, which was wild. We did not know that we like organically leaked into some cities like Columbus, Ohio. In Dallas, we had a marketing campaign like released there, but the people just loved the product so much. And like, I think we got like 50,000 referrals that were sent in like 1 week or something.
Nice.
So like, it was just booming like crazy. So that was really the time that we hit 19 on the App Store, but we've been like on the App Store charts at like, I don't know, I think 2 weeks ago we were at like 23 or something. Like we're constantly on the charts. And it's definitely a combination of like when we do a product release and there's some marketing behind it, and that marketing leading to a lot of people talking and referring their friends to the product.
Nice. Yeah. I like that. What was the worst networking advice that you've ever seen given out or either been given to you?
What's the worst networking advice I've ever gotten? I don't believe in cold DMs. I really think cold DMs are like such a waste of time. Like people who've told me like, just try cold messaging. It's just like the likelihood of them responding, the nature of the conversation. I'm not saying that cold DMs never work, but like I am just such a like, I prefer warm intros over anything. Or like if I am cold DMing somebody, like truly like I do it on Clockout because I can start an authentic conversation with them. I'm not like, hi, here's who I am. Here's my pitch. Here's what I want from you. I don't believe that that's like good networking.
Makes sense. What's the biggest mistake founders make when trying to go viral?
Probably trying to go viral too early. Or like maybe that's not even the right answer, but like I think there's a lot of products and founders that are just trying, like there's a balance between growth hacking, or like growth hacking is great if like you are now going to get a lot of customers or users on your product and you're going to use that data to now improve your product or validate your product. If you're just trying to go viral without like any said goal, or you're not prepared for that virality, like for example, like Clubhouse, I think is like the biggest telltale of like this, like they did such a good job, such a phenomenal job with like the FOMO, the celebrities, the invite only and everything.
Nothing with it.
But the product was so lacking.
Yeah.
Like there was no person, I remember coming onto it and it was like podcasts for like, or I don't know, like rooms. Like when I landed on my homepage, it was like Black women in real estate. What am I going to, you know what I mean? It's like a user's first impression of your product is so important. Like 100%. Make sure you have some value before trying to go viral, you know? Like that is like, I think there's like a combination that needs to be had. And if you're like just focusing on refining your K factor to like over 1, which is phenomenal, but it's only being done from a hacky standpoint.
Makes sense.
And it's not really done from like people wanting to use your product and wanting their friends on. And B, you haven't really validated it and your metrics are crap and your retention is terrible. Like, don't try to go viral. Focus on like improving your product first.
100%.
Yeah.
What's the biggest lie founders tell themselves about product market fit?
Maybe the biggest lie is like, just because you know that it's a problem and you're solving the problem and no one else has solved it before, that you've somehow achieved product market fit. For example, like you can have market validation over a problem that is unsolved, but that doesn't mean that your product is actually solving it. And I think sometimes founders are a little bit too optimistic, especially in the very beginning when they're like, oh, like everything out there is crap. So like my simple beta, to your question when we first sat down, of like, I'm gonna like build this product with $1,000 and I'm gonna ship it out and I'm gonna get like tens of thousands of users and I'm gonna achieve product market fit. Like, if you happen to achieve that, like that's just not likely. Like that's just not fundamentally possible. So just because you have an idea for a solution for a problem that has not yet been solved, consumers don't think of it that way.
Makes sense.
Consumers need to see your product and be like, they're not going to think of it like, oh, because this other product doesn't satisfy, because nobody else has satisfied this need, I'm going to use your product. If I use your product and I don't have a good experience on your product, I'm going to leave. So I think that's like probably like, I don't know if it's like the biggest lie, but it's like the biggest like overconfidence that I think founders have in the very beginning. And maybe that's like kind of a good thing in that like, I think if founders really knew how hard it is to achieve product market fit, you'd probably have less founders out there. So I think it's like you kind of have to fall on your face a little bit in the beginning and realize like, oh, like this is not easy. Like it's not just numbers that you put into financial
100%.
Models and then you're like, oh my God, I'm going to achieve this, or like, that's not how it actually works in real life, you know? And I think a lot of founders are like, they have those rose-colored glasses on. I myself being guilty of that in the beginning, not that I necessarily thought like this is product market fit, but I was like, oh, how hard can this be?
Yeah.
And it's hard.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Last question. What advice do you wish you got before you raised your first million?
Don't just try to raise money because you just think it's like the thing that you have to. Like, I feel like founders, like in the very beginning, because you really don't know what you're doing, you just see like what other people are doing. And you just think of it as like, my goal is to raise money. But it should be like what does that really mean? So what I mean by that is like, if VCs are telling you that you're too early, don't make it the bane of your existence to keep trying to chase a market, like especially in 2022, like chase where you can't, like you would be better off using that time either thinking about profitability and revenue generation or raising from people who are willing to take that risk. And individual investors are fine. And I actually think there are so many pros to angels because like you don't have to give up a board seat. You don't have somebody breathing down your neck at a pre-seed stage. Like I think so much of it is like, I think so much of getting the capital is like, the capital gives me validation that like my product is now a success. And that's not actually true. Like capital gives you the ability, and it's a blessing to have, to then build your product. But my point is like, it's better that you get the money and you start building than just spend like months and months trying to get money from like the perfect investor.
Makes sense.
Because the goal, I guess what I'm trying to say, and this is like a long-winded way of me saying it, but like the goal shouldn't be the money. The goal should be a successful product and a successful business. And I think for a lot of founders in the very beginning, the goal, like the business and the business success is like far out the window.
Like they're worried about raising the round, getting the headlines, getting
there's
the success.
nothing that you're thinking about other than the headline and the round.
Makes sense.
And like the other thing is like, I'm lucky that we raised the 1.3 million at like a good valuation, but like don't try to raise too much too early. That wasn't a problem that I ended up having. I think I raised the perfect amount that I needed. But like, I think at the time, if a VC had thrown me like a $10 million check, you know, that would have sounded great, but I would have diluted the company so much. And yeah, like I didn't need that. Like, I think for every founder, it's like raise how much you need to get your product to the next stage. Don't just like raise money because absurd amounts of money with like no idea what you're going to do with that. You're going to piss off your investor and you're going to like dilute yourself and you're going to have unrealistic targets that are put on you because if I'm given like, for the way that I see it, and maybe this is an interesting take, is like, I need to be confident that how much I raise, I can make. Like, I'm now going to hit 1.2 million in ARR by the end of this year. That's pretty much how much I raised. So now I'm comfortable that like, if you give me more, I know I'm like almost 100% sure that you will see an ROI because I really care about my investors and whoever is on my cap table.
Makes sense.
So I think it's really important of like having conviction of what you're going to do with that money and raising how much you need and not just chasing headlines. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, I appreciate your time. I know we're a little over, but before we end, why don't you look in the camera and just tell people where to find you? What are you working on? Where to find you? What are you working on? What can we link and plug for you? And just where they should find out and reach out.
Sure. I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Krishna Dosapati, so you can find me on LinkedIn. You can also follow our Instagram. It's clockout.app on Instagram. It's a really fun Instagram page. We have about 70,000 followers. And yeah, I think those are the best two ways that you can reach
And
me.
we'll link everything for you and, send assets and stuff, but I appreciate you coming on.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.